Thank you very much, Matteo. Good afternoon, everybody. The purpose of us asking you to come and see this presentation really is simply to show you the background to why we think the Halo is the best solution.
Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon, everyone. So, as Charlie explained, we wanted to give you as much background and information as possible about the research work that have been done that led to eventually having the Halo in the 2018 regulations. So, first, we will go through what has been this research path, what has been happening in the last 6-7 years, and how did we assess the Halo net safety benefit. How did we make that decision? How did we decide it was the best device for the car? And after that, as Charlie explained, we'll probably have a few question sessions after you have seen the various analyses that have been done. And perhaps we can finish off with topics such as visibility, egress, and extrication, which have been mentioned also several times in the press. Right, so the project actually started in 2011. It is, I guess, quite evident that as the car progressed in terms of overall safety, the most vulnerable part remained the driver's head, and therefore a number of studies have been conducted within the FIA in order to try and find a solution on what could be done next to protect the driver's head. So as you can see, we went quite an extreme way into looking at very wide range of devices. We went to roll bar in front of the car, roll bar ahead of the car, full canopy testing. Obviously, the very first shape of the Halo that you can see that, and perhaps also one of the first shield design. The underlying principle is that we were trying to protect at least against the driver's head being, or the cockpit being impacted by a wheel, and we picked a speed that we felt was a larger possibility, which was 225 kph. So that's what we have tried to pass with all these devices. Are they able to protect the drivers against an impact with a wheel at 225 kph? And as you can see, we pretty much went into full-scale testing with all of them. A few years later, we had a shortlisted systems that you see now, which were the Halos that had evolved quite a lot. We had many versions. We are now at Halo version 3. It might become version 4 by the time it hits the track next year. We had the aero screen that was running in Russia in 2016 with Red Bull, and we had, of course, a very recently track-tested shield in Silverstone with Sebastian Vettel. When we switch from that shortlist to the very latest decisions, well, we basically took into account the limitations we had hit with 2 of the 3 shortlisted systems. The aero screens was probably the most complete solution. It's basically a Halo with a screen put in front of it. You don't see the structure because it's hidden behind the top edge of the windscreen, but there was effectively a very Halo-type structure behind that edge, and it had 2 lateral pillars. It was very promising, but at the time where we had to make the decision, it was still not passing the wheel test, so it was still failing to completely protect against the wheel being thrown at it at the speed we had chosen. It's not something that is cast in stone for forever. It's something that we think, technically everything can be fixed. So one day, perhaps it will be fixed. But at the time, it was one of the main limitations we had. On top of that, we were discovering with the aero screens and later with the shield another family of issues that comes with the windscreens, and I'm sure you know them and you have seen them as much as we did, and they are related to the dirt, rain, how do you deal with fogging, and so forth and so on. So we knew there were a number of disadvantages that were coming with it, and as we said, it's about trying to establish the net benefit of what we put on the car, and this certainly didn't favor these options. So we ended up with pretty much that geometry of halo, and that's the most severe test we were passing with it, and that actually is the only device that we are passing that most severe decks. That's actually a 15 degrees, 225 kph, 20 kilogram wheel assembly being thrown at it, and as you can see, it did manage there to protect efficiently the drivers. So having established that, yeah, I'll show it again, sure. No, yeah, that's the only video, so I might as well show it several times. All right, so that's pretty much how we ended up choosing the Halo. So as I said, the program started in 2011. More than 10 different devices or even family of devices were studied in these 6 years. We had several occasions where the drivers express their support in having an additional frontal protections fitted onto open cockpit single-seater cars. They wrote twice to our president to formally ask for this to be introduced, and this, together with our own analysis, made that we pushed as hard as we could to try to find a suitable solutions. Then after that, as I'm sure you recall, we had an initial target to introduce the Halo in 2017. And in July 2016, pretty much exactly 1 year ago, the strategy group unanimously agreed to introduce additional frontal protection in 2018, leaving us enough time to track test Halo with all cars and potentially to explore other avenues. And I've been describing the other avenues we have explored in the meantime. Right. So the second part, and as Charlie said, after that part, I will stop and we will be answering the questions you may have. So after that, when we picked what we felt was the best device, how do you evaluate what is the net benefit? How much does it bring against how much does it take? We didn't find any magic formula for that. So there is no magic way to say it's better in 100% of the case as opposed to 99% or whatever. So what we've done is that we have tried to analyze real-life accidents. We took as many real-life accidents as possible, thanks to everybody's inputs, the drivers, the teams, you guys. And every time somebody was mentioning an accident, we did put it in what we call the risk assessment study. We divided it in 3 categories of risk: the car-to-car contact, the car-to-environment contact, and the external objects. So if I show you what it looks like, so for example, for the car-to-car contact, this is the cases we have analyzed. I'm going to zoom in a few seconds. So what did we do for each of these cases? For each of these cases, we looked at the real-life accident, and then we said, what would have happened if a Halo had been fitted to the car? We know the strengths of the Halo. We know the strengths of the attachment onto the car, etc., etc. We know the strengths of most part of the car with which the Halo would interact. So we played the what-if scenario. We fit the Halo onto the car, resimulate these accidents, and then tried not only to simulate that very single accident scenario, but also around that scenario, we tried to look at, okay, 5 centimeters above, 10 centimeters above, 10 centimeters on the right, 10 centimeters on the left, and so forth and so on. And at the end of that, for each of these cases, we then looked if it was very positive, neutral, or why not negative. So I'm sure you recall most of these crashes. So you have the 2007 Alex Wurz and David Coulthard near miss, as we call them. Luckily, on this category, there is a lot of near miss. We play the what-if scenarios on these. We call it positive on balance on these cases because the number of scenarios in which the Halo will have help is overwhelming compared to the number of scenarios where it would have been neutral or negative, and so forth and so on. So that's how we assess the risk and assess the net benefit of it up until very recent cases like the 2016 Formula 3 Macau incident, which I guess some of you attended. So then you have, for given categories, a car-to-car contact, you have an overall evaluation, which is what you see on the screen now. So how did we get to have all these accident scenarios positive or that positive? Well, the halo would become the strongest part of the car. It will be now referred to as the secondary roll structure. It can take about 15 times the car weight. And this is why it does play such a significant role, not only for the wheel, which naturally everybody focuses on, but also in very many accident scenarios which have been lucky in many cases. In some, they haven't been lucky. But this is why in the overall risk assessment, the car-to-car contact, and now we are going to see the car-to-environment contact, played such a big role compared to the single-wheel test that everybody refers to. So, as I just said, car-to-environment contact, unfortunately on the screen there is not only near miss but also fatalities. So I won't go in details into it, but you have a chance now to look at them in a zoomed version. So this is all the cases, again, we have analyzed. And again, for each of these cases, the what-if scenario, 10 centimeters on the left, 10 centimeters on the right, go up, go down, etc., etc. So as you can see, there is many accidents in our history, recent history, whereby the interaction of the car to environment will need additional head protection. And we felt that the overall conclusion of that was, again, as for the first category, car-to-car contact, it was also overwhelming for the car-to-environment contact. More recently, Pascal in Monaco. This is the pictures from the high-speed camera, so you might not have seen that one yet, but that's the high-speed camera that drivers is now facing for accident analysis purpose. So, as I said, overwhelming response from this analysis in terms of how much positive impact it could have had in this scenario. Two more cases, we didn't finish the analysis there, so we quoted it as pending, but crossing the ocean, there is also very sad accidents where we feel that the halo could have played a role as well. So finally, last category, external objects, perhaps the most known one. So the halo was indeed initially designed for the two cases you have on the screen. It was designed to precisely cope with the Henri Surtees accidents in 2009, and later on we slightly tweaked its geometry to make sure it would as well cope with the Justin Wilson accident in 2015. So, needless to say, for these two accidents, it's very much designed for that, so we believe that it would have changed dramatically the outcome of the accident. There is also a number of smaller external objects. We will get onto the smaller objects topic a bit later, whereby there is a positive influence to have the halo in front of the car. We know it's not like having a screen, and it's not 100%, but it statistically increases the level of protection. So the small objects then. The small objects, there is no mystery, there is no windscreen there, and therefore you are potentially exposed to smaller objects as much as you are now, with two important factors. The first one is that in the wake of Felipe Massa's accident here, actually, 10 years ago or nearly so, we have made a big step with the helmet standards, with the integration of the Xylon panel on the visor in order to deal with the type of small objects that Felipe had to deal with at the time. So we know that our resistance, so our protection against small objects, have stepped up in this respect by upgrading the helmet standard. And by the way, there is another step coming in 2019 in this respect with a new standard coming out. And then we looked at mathematical studies whereby we played the game of throwing millions of small objects to the halo in all different angles and all different positions, and we looked at what was the difference between halo fitted and halo no fitted. And this is where the famous number sometimes comes out in the press. But anyway, statistically, when you put a structure in front of the drivers, you are going to increase its protections against the small debris coming to hit him compared to not having the halo. So the number is not spectacular, but you still, even for small objects, increase statistically significantly your potential protection. So that was our magic formula, or perhaps our lack of magic formula, and the way we approached it. So we analyzed these 25 cases, and it became clear to us that the overall results of this analysis give us little possibility not to push on with the halo. All right then, visibility. So we tried halo with all teams, pretty much with all drivers. A very large majority of the drivers were satisfied with the visibility. We did have initial feedback from one or two drivers that had a bit of a claustrophobic feeling the first time they run with the shield with that shape ahead of us. But we were comfortable with the fact that we could deal with all that. If you compare the field of visions with an LMP1, so in LMP1 in Le Mans we have the opposite problems. The FIA impose a minimum field of visions to the manufacturers, otherwise they will design cars that basically would barely allow the drivers to see through. So you can see there the minimum visibility template that we impose in an LMP1 car, and you can see how it fits with the halo. So we are very comfortable with the fact that we were offering a much better visibility than in other categories. In real life world, this is how it looks when you are in one of these two cars. So altogether, we were comfortable that the vision's quality and satisfactions could be reached. Not to mention that the central strut that you see here on the right-hand side of the pictures is currently 20 millimeters. We feel that we have scope to reduce that thickness for the benefit of the driver's forward visions. So we'll be testing before next year, going as low as 16 millimeters and see how much we can push it. Egress and extrication. So the standard egress was pretty much not an issue. One driver felt that it would be a critical issue. All the drivers felt that it will be no significant issue. I think it was the dominating factor there was that when we tested the halo you have seen on all cars, 95% of them were non-structural. So the drivers could not pull on them to get out of the car, and therefore you end up in a rather awkward situations. But altogether, we had prepared for all sorts of things with the halo. We had prepared with hinge mechanism, we had prepared with explosive bolts, and in the end, we established that we could get out of the car in all situations without needing all that. So we could still introduce that if we were feeling that something more was needed, but we were overall very comfortable. So this is a typical extrication with the halo fitted. So as you can see, there is just the halo is fitted in place, and in top view, it's pretty much matching the cockpit entry template. So therefore, the extrications procedures change because the guys have to do different movements, but basically, it's largely unaffected. Then we had the scenario of what if the car is turned upside down? And if you remember, this came especially highlighted after Fernando's accident in Melbourne last year. So at first, as Charlie always reminds us, the standard procedure for this sort of situation is that the car should be pushed back onto its wheel by the marshals. That's what we are aiming to do. But nevertheless, we wanted to see what would then have happened. So we've put one of our engineers, I'm sure most of you know, Andy Mellor. I was not exactly happy when we did that, but we fit a halo on a dummy chassis, and we've put the car upside down and tried to look in real life how it would be. And what you can see now is that in fact it is actually preserving better space to the drivers, because the car is resting in the front part of the halo, offering more space than what it currently have compared to the ground. So it's basically raising up the car compared to where it will be without it. So when we showed that to the drivers, they felt that it will be actually quite a good training for all of them to go through. That was the very first trial of Andy at the time, so it's not exactly fast, but I'm sure you can see that anybody could do it. Yeah, he's here tomorrow, so I need to be careful. And then we looked at this very last scenario. Okay, fine, we didn't find any scenario where we need to remove the halo, but is that good enough? Are we sure there is not one scenario where the halo is going to be completely deformed over the driver's head and we will want to remove it? Well, at first, if this is happening, we will probably all be very happy that the halo was fitted to the car in the first place, because if something deforms that device, you can only imagine what it would have been without it. But we investigated a lot of toolings and equipment in order to cut the halo, and we sourced something that is small enough to be fitted in our medical car, and that will cut the halo in no time. So even in a very extreme scenario that we couldn't so much picture, we feel we'll be able to cut the halo in basically no time. That's it, really. So, in summary, we felt that the net safety benefit was quite overwhelming. The risk assessment concluded that the number of cases in which it would help us was incredibly superior to any other considerations. The drivers' feedback, we felt the visibility and egress response from them has been very positive, and very little tweak to the extrication process was needed to actually get our medical teams up to speed. And this is basically the main pillars by which we eventually mandated for 2018.
Kate Walker, motorsport.com. Given all of the research that you've done in this and looking at accidents in other categories and across the pond, are you going to be sharing this technology and your research with non-FIA championships? So what's the sort of cooperation there?
Yeah, it's a very good point. So safety research at the FIA works in the following manner. We have research groups where all the main categories of motorsports are involved. FIA or non-FIA, doesn't matter. So we meet 4 times a year with NASCAR, IndyCar, DTM, V8 Supercar, and we share everything research-wise. They have access to everything, we have access to everything. This is why we could design the halo specifically for Justin's accident. And equally, this is why we collaborated with IndyCar, that also is looking at windscreen solutions, and we have complete sharing of experience and knowledge when it comes to safety research. We might not reach all the time the same conclusions, but we absolutely share everything.
Steph Ryan, Zero Zone News. Will the teams be able to be allowed to put any aerodynamic features on the halo, or how far will they be able to go in terms of altering the specifications of the halo?
They have to use the standard halo, which will be by a single supplier. We allow them to use non-structural fairings around the upper part, which can be no more than 20 millimeters from the main structure. And I think there's an overall width restriction, and I think there's a restriction on how far they can encroach onto the cockpit opening. But 20 millimeters is quite a lot. all the way around, so they can do what they like with that. I think the main reason for doing it in the first place was to give them the scope to overcome any aero changes they've got, for example, airbox and things like that. They wanted to be able to redirect the flow.
Kate Walker, motorsport.com. Are you rolling the Halo out in all of the other open cockpit categories run by the FIA? And is the rollout at the same time or different dates?
So that's certainly the intention, to cascade down as we do with any other safety features, from safety belt standards, helmet standards. We will cascade it down to the other single seaters. As we explained, the Halo is the strongest part of the car, so it is not possible to retrofit it on an existing car. But every new single seater car that will come after Formula One, we will be introducing it. So yes, you will see it being cascaded down. It will take some years, because in the end of the day, in smaller categories, they don't do a new car every year, so it might take some time, but you will see it.
Also, I think it's worth pointing out that this is what happens with things like crash testing, for example, where Formula 3 will typically, at the moment, follow 2010 Formula 1 rules. These things cascade down, as Laurent said, gradually into the lower formulae.
You've mentioned about the idea the Shield could come back into play in 2, maybe 3 years' time. Will you actively continue working and developing it, or is it now up to maybe a third party to come with an alternative solution?
I think we always look. That's the purpose of the research work. We always look at what's available out there, you know. So yes, we will always be doing some background work on new technology coming. But you know, even if you go further than the Shield, you know, I'm sure sometime in the futures we will be able to have some automatic system that comes out. For example, only when the accident occurs. Today, the technology is nowhere near being able to offer that to us for the load case we are trying to protect against, but perhaps one day it will be the case. So all this sort of background work is very much the normal research work that we do every year.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Laurent.